My friend Lisa just didn't understand. The two of us were the first to arrive at our office on Christmas Eve, and we did so before 7 in the morning as we worked at Hewlett-Packard in Palo Alto, and we wanted to avoid that notorious Silicon Valley traffic. But Lisa came by my desk with what she thought was a simple question. She said, "Is it okay if I leave work today at 10:30 and get paid for the full day?" Now, the premise behind her question was something that both she and I knew, that on the last day of work before Christmas, somewhere around midday, one of the senior managers would come and send everybody home, say, "Take the rest of the day off, you get paid for the full day, it's an early Christmas gift." So that was her logic, because she knew that most people showed up between 8 and 8:30. So they would work 4 hours to get the full day's pay. She thought since she was there at 6:30, if she left at 10:30, it would be an equivalent benefit. But unfortunately, I had to break Lisa's heart that day, because I said, "It doesn't work that way, Lisa. See, we can't assume a gift is going to be given. And unless we are here when the executive manager comes by to release us all, well, then we only get paid for the hours worked." I also told her that it was her choice and my choice to come in early to avoid the traffic, and therefore we had already made our choice, knowing what we knew, to work an extra hour or two than the rest. I thought it was a great argument. It didn't work with Lisa. She responded, "That's not fair. It's not just." And I found myself immediately transported into the middle of today's gospel parable. Now, I will admit the first time that I heard this gospel reading, and probably at least the first half dozen times I heard this gospel reading, I would agree with the laborers in today's reading and with Lisa's comment to that Christmas Eve. It's not fair. Why did those people who only worked 1 hour at the end of the day get paid just as much as those that had toiled in the hot sun for 12 hours? That isn't just. But I know that Jesus didn't tell this parable just to irritate me. So I spent a lot of time over the years trying to grapple, what is the message? What is Jesus getting at here? And I finally had my aha moment. It was startling, but very important. God's definition of justice is not our definition of justice. And my friends, you and I should be very, very thankful for that. You see, our definition, or human definition of justice, is that each person gets what they deserve. That if two people do the same thing, they should be treated absolutely equally. That whatever benefits you get derive from your efforts or your actions. Do something good, you get a reward. Do something bad, you get a punishment. That's our human definition of justice. A human definition of justice is based on our actions. That's not God's definition of justice. God's justice is not based on what we do, but based on who we are. And in God's eyes, we are His beloved sons and daughters. It's a very, very different concept of what is just between our limited human form and the generous divine form of justice. And as I told you, that's a very, very good thing. Because when you think about it, throughout all of salvation history, the actions of the chosen people, the actions of the people in the gospel readings, and our actions today could no way earn that. Jesus dying on the cross for us. Do you realize that in all 4 Gospels, and if you don't believe me, read them all, Jesus never punishes anyone. He teaches, He inspires, He guides, He heals, He forgives, He admonishes not to sin anymore, but He never punishes. And look at God's interaction with the chosen people during all of salvation history. Look, the Jews wandering in the desert, and throughout the entire history, through early Christian history as well, we weren't all terribly good at following God's instruction. God had plenty of reasons to turn his back on us and say, we're done, I'm out. But he never did. Through the law, through the prophets, and finally through his only Son, he continued to be faithful to us even when we were faithless to him. That's because God's justice is not based on what we do. The U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops, in their 1986 pastoral letter, Economic Justice for All, synthesized it nicely when they said, human justice is based on rights and actions. God's justice is based on the rightness of humanity before God. That's the blessing of today's reading. That's what we all should be celebrating every Sunday. That we have been given the gift of life, the gift of relationship with God, the gift of salvation, free of charge. Because there's nothing we could ever do to earn it. No matter how hard we try, we could never earn this. If you think that you need, through your actions, to earn God's love, get over it. Because it's never going to happen. You know why? Because you already have it. You can't earn what you already had. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our religious practices over time have been based on this concept, though, of earning things. That was the way that Sister Rosario controlled a class of second graders when I was growing up. If you don't do the right thing, you're going to hell. God's going to be mad at you. Be good little boys and girls, or you're not getting into heaven. What we have done is we have created God in our image and likeness, as one that's got a ruler, a measurement, and is measuring us to see if we're good enough to get into heaven. But that's not consistent with a God who would die on the cross for us, hanging between two thieves. Now, because I read mind, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, cool. That means it doesn't matter what I do, I get to go to heaven. Well, not exactly. We don't earn our way into heaven. That's a gift. But as those who accept the gift of God, that gift of salvation, we are called to follow him. And in following him, what we're called to do is to bring the kingdom of God into the world in our actions. Notice how today's parable starts, as do many. The kingdom of God is like a landowner who. You and I, by saying that we are followers of Jesus Christ, take up the mantle and the responsibility of overturning that limited view of human justice with God's generous divine justice. So what does that look like? I think the best, easily to understand example of that is the Catholic teaching on marriage. There's a very great difference between civil marriage and Catholic sacramental marriage in the way they're defined. Civil marriage is a contract. That's exactly what it is. Two parties enter into an agreement. They have rights and responsibilities as part of that agreement. But if you don't uphold your end of the contract, what happens? Contract is broken. It can be gotten rid of. A civil marriage is a 50-50 contract. That's human justice. What does the church teach? Anyone who's had to put up with me coaching them and teaching them as they prepared for marriage knows this. Catholic marriage is a covenant. It's not a 50-50 partnership. It's a 100 relationship. Each party gives 100%. And there's no get out of jail free card. So, Sam, no matter how much you may screw up, Marie doesn't get the get-out-of-jail-free card. She's in it with you for life. But I can say that because I know they know this. They know that on the days when Marie is weak, Sam will carry it 100%, and vice versa. That's divine justice. You don't earn benefits on what you do. It's based on who you are. Now, not everyone here is married. I hope none of you four are married, right? Okay, it still applies to you. That same principle of how we act with our family members, with our friends, with people at school, with people at work. That when someone breaks a promise to you, hurts you in some way, as Christians, as those that are bringing God's divine justice into the world, we don't just set them by the wayside. We stay in relationship with them. We walk forward with them as we heal that brokenness. It was talked about in last Sunday's reading, right? The gospel on forgiveness. How many times do we forgive? 77. That's just a symbolic number, my friends, right? It means without end. We never stop forgiving. But bringing God's divine justice into the world is not limited by our immediate tribe, by our circle of family and friends. We are called to bring the kingdom of God to all the children of God in the world. And that is why, as Christians, when we enter into a situation, we do it with the love of God, not with the judgment of man. That is why the Catholic Church takes its positions. It's very consistent in what it does in terms of bringing generous divine love. That is why we reach out to help the poor of the world, no matter what country they're in. That is why we care for the immigrant, no matter what their status. That is why we ensure people have proper medical care, regardless of their ability to pay. Divine justice is not based on whether you earned it or not. It's based on the fact that you're a child of God. And we also defend the powerless. That is why the church takes the position against abortion, against physician-assisted suicide, and against capital punishment. Your rights are not based on how much you contribute to society. They're based on the fact that you're a child of God. So like most parables, we have a lot to celebrate because we've received a gift. And then there's that little thorn in the side because there's the challenge of how we live with the gift we have been given, because we're called to share that gift with the world. As we contemplate that gift today, I think it's important to realize who we are in this story. We are not the workers who work 12 hours under the hot sun. We're the laborer who came and worked the 1 hour. Because we have received from God something far in excess of what we could ever earn. And that's the good news of the day. It's been 30 years since Lisa and I had that conversation. And hopefully, with wisdom and maturity, she understands the point I was making that day. But whether she ever realizes that point, I hope she and you and I realize we have already received a gift far more valuable than extra pay on Christmas Eve.